The Lifestyle Show, presented by Selina Mackenzie.
It is culinary corner time, and today we are going to be talking about the book Cooking Made Simple, Foolproof Recipes for Busy People. Welcome to the show, Alexandra Dudley.
Hi, nice to be here.
Nice to have you on the show. So this has been described as stress-free recipes for every day. Tell us more.
I think there can be a tendency to really overcomplicate cooking, especially when it comes to entertaining, but even more so just kind of cooking. It could be a family of four. I've got a little one and then a husband who eats a lot, and we can really overcomplicate things in the kitchen. I love old cookbooks, and I think the thing I love most about them is how practical they are, the way they're divided into sort of your sauces and your salads and your meats. And whilst this book it's not divided entirely like that, it is a very practical book. So the idea with it was really just to make cooking this as kind of effortless and simple. And I've cooked in very small kitchens, I've cooked in very big kitchens, so I've learned really well how to sort of navigate however big that space is. So it's just basically it's not a very whimsical way of saying it, but it is really about learning to kind of navigate that space properly to create something that's really delicious and quite effortless, but still looks and hopefully tastes wonderful.
I'm sure it tastes wonderful as well. There is something about proper cookery books though, aren't there? And I agree with the older ones. I know we do such a lot online nowadays, but there's nothing nicer than having your cookery book in front of you and just turning the page and getting flour and things all over it.
I agree. I also read, I know I'm not alone in this, but I read cookery books almost like novels. I always have a stack by my bed. And I think so many of my favourite writers anyway, they're such excellent writers. There's always such a good story behind so many of the recipes.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing that you said that resonated with me is life is busy, time is short. So does that mean these are quick and easy recipes?
They're definitely easy. Most of them are very quick. There's one chapter called Tossed, which is not just salads. We could call it salads, but it's things that can be tossed together very quickly. A lot of those are salads. But it's divided into kind of tossed, stirred, baked, which are kind of, I always say bung it in the oven, but essentially dishes that you've tossed everything together, chuck it in a tray and bung it in the oven. So in a sense, the hands-on element of that is very quick, but it will then just cook for, 40, 50 minutes and you can do whatever you want. You can kind of set the table, wash your hair, paint your nails, have a glass of wine. It's up to you. So,
that all sounds lovely.
They might not all be quick, but the idea is that the kind of hands-on sort of laborious element of it is quick and actually not laborious. That's kind of the point.
Yeah, and I think if you enjoy cooking, it can never be laborious.
Yeah, exactly, but I think sometimes it's even just pairing recipes together. I always say the cooked breakfast is probably one of the most stressful things, a kind of full English breakfast to make.
Oh, crikey, yeah, I could never own a B&B.
There's so many different elements. You've got stuff in the oven, stuff in the hob. There's too much going on. And it's funny because it's something that most of us try and achieve, not every single weekend, but, I'm sure a lot of us try and do that at a couple of points. And I find that sort of cooking quite stressful. So it was really, if you've got kind of 5 people coming for supper and you've got 2 hob rings or a very small oven, there's no point doing 3 different things that need the oven because the oven probably, unless it's some sort of super oven, isn't going to work as well if you've got 3 things in there. Or if you've only got 2 hob rings, you'll try and do 3 things in the hob, it's going to be a bit tricky. So it's also kind of pairing things together so that you can kind of free up space, whether it be in your oven or on the hob or, even on your countertop.
Yeah. So the chapters are tossed, baked and stirred?
Tossed, baked, stirred, grilled, but given that it rains quite a lot in England where I am, everything in that chapter has a way that if you're not cooking it on a barbie, you could do it either in a pan or in the oven. And then there's sugared because I am a pudding girl and I feel like you have puddings in there. And also, I think puddings are something that tend to frighten people or panic people. So I will often get asked just by friends and family for kind of simple pudding recipes, and they are all They're all incredibly simple to execute. And then what else? Oh, there's one more. There's a chapter called Better Basics, which are, again, it's definitely inspired by those old cookbooks that I said I loved at the beginning. But it's got kind of all the things that I personally use and lean on to kind of give a dish a little bit of oomph. So all the really good sauces, or it could be, I've got like different salsa verdes in there. There's some really good crackers and things like soda bread. Bread is something that homemade bread gives me definitely domestic goddess vibes, and it can obviously be, quite, it can be quite time intensive, but there are definitely bread recipes, cracker recipes, flatbreads that really take no time at all. And actually, often you could spend a couple of hours cooking something in the kitchen, spend 20 minutes making some flatbreads, and it'll be the flatbreads that people talk about and that people remember. So it's those kind of little extras that can sometimes just be the difference between making a good meal, to taking it to a great meal.
Yeah. Back to desserts. That's what I say. Back to desserts.
Yeah.
I was reading that you do a pistachio tiramisu.
Yeah.
How
yeah,
nice.
I mean, pistachio is having a real moment at the moment, actually. But I feel like tiramisu has always been a party pudding. I love tiramisu. I remember it was the pudding that kind of made me feel really grown up when I was a child, because it had coffee in it. And I felt really mature and, wiser than my years, because I liked coffee at the age of 7. But it was probably the cream and the sugar that I really enjoyed. So yeah, there is a pistachio tiramisu, which sounds complicated, but it really isn't. Follows all the kind of same methods and sort of like traditional ways of a classic one. You're basically just whisking in pistachio cream, which is quite or pistachio paste, widely available now, in with the kind of mascarpone, and you do get that fab green colour, which just kind of looks great. Especially, we've just had St. Patrick's Day as well, haven't we? So,
yes, of course. Yeah, great for yesterday.
Very on theme.
Yeah. So other recipes I was reading: 1 tray baked chicken with herby rice, and then one that I'm not sure about: brothy beans with cavolo nero. What's
Cavolo nero.
Cavolo nero. It sounds Italian.
Well, it is it's Italian kale, but it's, that kind of longer kale that's like very dark green. It's a very dark, bitter green. We actually grow it a lot in England. We're very good at growing kale here. But sometimes it's called Latino kale, I think. But it's like dark kale. You could use any sort of hardy green for that. But it is quite nice to get those kind of like rich, irony vegetables in there. I feel like that's definitely one for when it's kind of colder weather, really comforting, and you want something quite soothing. And I tend to do it with leftover chicken from a roast chicken, and I've made a stock by just boiling up the carcass. And then I've always got a jar of beans hanging around, and all the other kind of bits, like a carrot. I use fennel instead of celery, but a carrot and onion, or a shallot, bit of garlic. You just make a kind of quite standard sofrito base, and then in goes the stock and the beans, and then the chicken and that kale. Or, you could use some cabbage. You could use spinach. You can skip it out, but I do like a bit of green, so I put a bit of green in there.
Yeah, and greens are good for you, aren't they? Particularly
greens
kale.
Are good for you. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, one of the other recipes in the book is it is chicken with pink peppercorns. I didn't know peppercorns could be pink.
Yeah, well, and they are pink. They really are quite bright pink. I love pink peppercorns. I think, in general, there aren't really any obscure ingredients in the book, and that was the idea. Pink peppercorns are actually, you can get them in any supermarket, and they're very widely available, but they are an ingredient that I think can make such a difference to lots of things. They're much milder than a black peppercorn. I don't think you could just crunch on it. Well, you might do, but crunching on, a handful of black peppercorns would be an interesting experience, whereas pink peppercorns, they're kind of sweeter. They're much more subtle. And they've got a little bit more of a kind of citrusy kind of zestiness. I love them, I have to confess, also because of the colour. And they do add just a fantastic sort of level of colour and pop to almost anything. But this chicken in particular, which is probably my favourite recipe from the book, is one from the chapter Baked, and it really involves just kind of tossing your chicken and your vegetables all together in one tray. The chicken goes, you sort of make sure it's rearranged on top with the skin on the skin side up. And as the chicken cooks, the vegetables sort of steam the chicken from below. So you get really nice kind of tender meat. And simultaneously that fat is coming from the skin. My mouth's watering, but the fat is dripping into the vegetables. So the end result is you get this really great crispy skin chicken with that golden crispy skin, tender meat. And then you've got these buttery, soft vegetables. And those pink peppercorns are left. They've got flecks on the chicken, but they're also sort of within the vegetables as well. So you get these great kind of pops of flavor. And as I said, it's very different to black pepper. So it's not that kind of slightly aggressive, makes you want to sneeze kind of pepperiness. It's a lot it's fruitier.
Sounds delicious. Sounds absolutely delicious. And that's in the baked section.
That's in baked, yeah.
Well, if our listeners like the sound of this, the book is called Cooking Made Simple, Foolproof Recipes for Busy People. It's by Alexandra Dudley, who we're speaking to now. And as always, we're selling it in our virtual bookshop on our website, TRE.radio. Alexandra, I know this isn't your first book, so do you have a website if people want to find out more about you?
I do, yeah. I have one, just Alexandra at alexandradudley.com, but most of my recipes now are on my Substack, which is called Come for Supper. I feel like lots of food writers are on there, so I'm sure you have some listeners who already sort of read recipes on there, but that's probably the best place to keep up with new writing and new recipes.
Great stuff. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm a little bit hungry now, but I'm sure I'll manage till 4. Then I'm going home to have a tiramisu.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye.